My name is Pranav Mulpur, and I'm going to go over the results for my EE 342 final exam. I'm going to first briefly cover the response curve and changes to the transfer functions for each controller, and then I'm going to spend most of the time comparing the data between each of the controllers. So the first Pi controller was underdamped, as you can see in the bottom right. In each of these, the bottom left table shows the design requirements. So this controller only had us adjusting the closed loop holds. We were not adding any additional open loop holds or zeros. In the Pi controller, the system was still also underdamped. There was a pole added at the origin, and there was a real zero added at negative 0.3. In the lead controller, we can see that the system is still underdamped. And you can tell this is a lead controller because the added pole is further away from the origin than the added zero. Now, the PID controller was more unique in the case that the step response was almost critically damped. So it's still underdamped, but it was not as underdamped as the previous controllers. In this case, we added two real zeros, and there was an integrator, which was the origin at zero. Now, in the final slide, I want to talk more about comparing the controllers. As you can see in the table, I kind of highlighted some values in red and highlighted some values in green. But just because the values are green or red, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're always better or worse. These are more generalizations made for this specific system. In general, these values really depend on what your system is and what you're trying to achieve. So in some cases, a greater percent overshoot may actually be better than a smaller percent. In the same way, a settling time may be better to be slower than faster based on what the system is intended for. In this case, I highlighted the higher values. So as you can see by the Pi controller, it had a very high percentage overshoot, almost close to 85%, and same with the settling time. But the Pi controller and the PID controller had exactly 0% steady state error. The PID controller in this case was the best because it had the lowest percentage overshoot, a very small settling time, and the gains were interesting because the PID controller had a very small gain, which meant that the system is less sensitive.